Welcome to a study in the Hebrew alphabet and culture. Here is your Hebrew scholar, Dr. Karl.
Why study Hebrew? The scriptures are written in the Old Testament in Hebrew and Aramaic, and the New Testament documents that we have are Hebrew thoughts translated into Greek. Most English-speaking people don't understand the real importance of studying the scriptures in Hebrew, and because of that, they miss a great deal of information locked up in the Old Testament Hebrew scriptures that don't come through clearly in English. There are differences between the English Bibles, whatever translation you may use, and the Hebrew texts or scriptures. The 5 major differences between English and Hebrew are very simply that English is noun-oriented, whereas Hebrew is verb-oriented. This makes a very important discovery about what's really important in your Bible, because we in the West study nouns when in fact the scripture important words are verbs. Second difference is that the English language is very abstract in its meanings, whereas Hebrew is very concrete and word picture oriented. Why study Hebrew? This is my classic example. I hold here a rope, and this rope is a word picture graphically describing the word found in Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31, translated, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength." The word wait in English means to sit down and be passive and do nothing, whereas the word kavah, translated wait, means to take string and twist them together into a rope. Now the rest of the verse makes sense. They that are interwoven like strings of a rope with God are made strong. In English, they that wait upon the Lord, they that do nothing, might lead one to believe that waiting upon God should be a passive act. But when you study Hebrew, you find out that waiting is very active, and like strings woven into a rope, you're supposed to take your life and weave it together into the fabric of God by prayer and fasting and Bible study and those kinds of things, and then you're made strong. So the difference between English, which is very abstract, and Hebrew is that Hebrew is a concrete word picture language. Third difference between English and Hebrew is English is Western or Occidental, and Hebrew is Eastern or Oriental. And therefore, the cultures that you're dealing with biblically are quite different than those that we experience here in the West. The fourth difference between the English translation that you read and the Hebrew text is that in English we are constantly trying to proof text what we believe. We come up with an idea of what we believe, and then we search the Bible to find out if we can find texts to prove what we believe. Hebrew, however, is not written that way. It is a very conceptual language where you will find the concept of love woven throughout, for example, Genesis to Malachi, and indeed throughout the New Testament. So what one has to do in the Bible is to not study different texts to prove points, but rather to follow a concept from book to book throughout the Old Testament. The last and significant difference between the two languages is that Hebrew is a primary language and English is a secondary language. English is made up of other languages, whereas Hebrew is a Shem or Shemitic language coming right from Moses. Back to Noah's Ark, one of his sons' name was Shem, and so the Hebrew language comes from the Shem group of languages. We also should point out to you that in Hebrew, it's a vowel-less language, and we use as an example that if we were to write the word bag in English without vowels, we would simply put the two consonants B, G down, and we wouldn't know, however, unless by context, that this was the word bag or the word big or the word beg. So what we would have to do is put a vowel underneath the B, and then we would know that this is the word bag. And all we would have to do to change this word from bag to bag would be to change the A to an E. Then we would have the word beg. This is the way that the Jewish people have come up with a vowel system. But instead of using an E or an A, they use a straight line, for example, is the letter A as in hat. So now I have spelled B-A-G, bag. Now, to spell the same thing in Hebrew, I would use their B and their G, and I would have spelled bag by putting the vowel here, and it would be B-A-G. This is just simply an introduction to the idea of their vowel signs, which have been added 700 years plus after Christ so that Gentiles could learn to pronounce the language correctly in a vowelless language. It had no vowels when it was written. These signs have been added at a later time so that we would all be able to pronounce their language. These vowels are listed for you, and a simple explanation of this process is on pages 7 and 8 in your Introduction to Hebrew, the Alphabet Workbook. The Hebrew vowel system is found on page number 8 in your workbook. There are basically 12 or 13 major sounds in the Hebrew alphabet. Indeed, the sounds are found in every language. We are going to illustrate these by always using the letter Beth, and the three dominant sounds we will put up first are found to go beneath the letter. This Beth could represent any letter. The first one is a straight line, and the straight line simply means to make the sound as A as in hat. It's called patah. So whenever this straight line appears under any letter, A is in hat. The second is a shape that looks like a small T. This particular sound is A as in father, or ah. And then the third major sound, three dots in a triangle, E as in met. These are the three sounds that are primary sounds to all languages. The straight line is ah, the T is ah, and the three dots are E as in met, or eh. Petah, kametz, and sego. The next group of sounds found on this page have to do with the O and the I sound. If you want to get an O sound, you put a dot above and to the left of a letter. If you want the sound as I, as in machine, you put one dot underneath a letter and follow this Beth with the letter Yod and the two together, I as in machine. If you just want the I sound, you just have one dot beneath the letter. So this vowel is called Holam, O. This vowel is called Hirik Yod, I as in machine, or the double E sound. Or one dot by itself is called Hirik, I. O, E, and I. The next group that we have are the U sounds and the remainder of the O sounds. If you put three dots, one beneath the other on an angle, you have the as in the word put. Shuruk. If you have a Beth and it's followed by a Wow with a dot in it, this sound is U as in true. And if you have a Beth followed by a wow with a dot over the top, it has the same sound as the O. So you got oo, and O. And then the final sounds, you put a beth here with two dots under it called seri, one beside the other. You have E as in they. The same sound is found when you have two dots under it, and this letter is followed by the yod. You pronounce the two as E as in they, and then the final sound, one dot above the other, called shiwa, the little tiny E sound. So you have A, both together A, these sound exactly the same, and then the little tiny E sound. In modern Hebrew, they have added one sound where they have put a straight line, which is normally A as in hat, followed by a yod, and this gives the sound for I, such as in the word Adonai. Now finally, you can combine this last one called the shiwa, you can combine this little tiny sound with these top three sounds. When you add them, you put it like this to the right, and like this, and like that, and the effect of adding the two together, and it only happens on these three, is that you cut the pronunciation in half. So this is the table of vowels found on page number 8 in your workbook. And the sounds, once again, are a, eh, o, e, I, u, o, a, and eh. And then the final modern sound of I, like in the word Adonai. These are your vowel sounds.
The Hebrew letter Aleph.
On pages 9 and 10 in your workbook, you will find the letter Aleph. Aleph. Spelling it phonetically for you. Aleph. This is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The phonetic way to say this in Sephardic or Biblical Hebrew, which is what we're learning in this course, as compared to modern Hebrew, is Aleph. Today you would hear the sound Aleph, but we are speaking Sephardic, Middle Eastern, Biblical Hebrew, so our pronunciation for this letter is Aleph. Aleph, as a word picture, means ox head. When the ancient people first wrote, they did not write in words or in sentences. They actually drew pictures. So the first time that this letter was drawn, it actually was shaped like an ox head. And that's the way the letter looked when the first man drew an ox head. However, through the centuries of time, the Aleph is meant to be shaped like this. This is the preferred way of drawing the letter. That's stroke number 1. You start here and you move down to the right. Then you come here and draw that leg, and then you add this stroke. Now before you're completed, you come back and add this little stroke to the right top and this little stroke to the left bottom. These two little strokes are called in the scriptures tittles. Adding those little lines completes your letter. Again, the drawing of this letter is down and over. Lift up your pen. Draw the right top, the left bottom, add the two tittles, and you've completed the letter, Aleph. One of the cautions against drawing this letter would be that you not make an X out of it. This is like a lot of people want to do that. This is not acceptable. When you make the Aleph, remember that this and this has a big space in it here. It is not an X. It does not cross over. So this is not what you want to do. This is the desired look of the Aleph. The English equivalent sound obviously is the letter A. However, the Aleph has many sounds, and it really depends upon the vowel that you have placed beneath it. So we say that the Aleph is silent. By that, we simply mean only pronounce the vowel that you see placed under the Aleph. When they use their alphabet, they also use their letters to count. And so the numeric value of this is the numeric value of 1. So they could use their alphabet to count as well. Now this goes back to the time before Abraham. Today, obviously, the Hebrew language has a word for the number 1. The number would be pronounced today echad, 1. But in ancient times, they used their alphabet letters to have numeric value. So again, we want to remind you that this letter Aleph is a silent letter. By that we mean that you only pronounce the vowel which is beneath the letter. You don't pronounce the letter, you just pronounce the vowel beneath it.
The Hebrew letter Beth.
The letter Beth is found on pages 11 and 12 in your Hebrew workbook. Beth, second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, spelled phonetically in English, Beth. Beth originally meant, as a word picture, the word would be house. It originally meant house. Now, how does it mean house? The letter is shaped like this. You go from left to right, curve down, then near the bottom, kick out, and then come straight over. Beth. How is that a house? Well, the original houses were in the sides of mountains, and they would carve out a cave, and then they would be above the level of the valley so that people would have to fight uphill if they were under attack. So you can see the Beth coming from right out of the cave. Even has in the back of the cave a place for the water which would come in from rain to gather in the back. So this boot is very important. Again, you draw the Beth from left to right, you curve down, then when you get near the bottom you kick out and then come straight over. Now the Beth has several sounds. If the sound is going to be a B, you put a dot inside the letter. The dot inside the Beth means to pronounce it as a B. If you leave the dot out, if there's no dot here, it softens to the V sound. So a dot inside the Beth, B for its English equivalent, remove the dot and it softens it to a V. Now if you are using the Hebrew alphabet letters as ancient people would do to count, then obviously this stands for the number 2. The numeric value of this letter would be 2. Now the first 2 letters that we have in our alphabet are Aleph, and then the second one, Beth. And hence the word alphabet. Aleph-bet. Aleph, ox head, Beth, house. These are the first 2 letters that a child would learn in Hebrew, because when you put these 2 letters together, you are spelling ab, or a more proper way to say it, abba, or the word would be daddy. So Aleph, Beth, Aleph is the word Abba, or the familiar word scripturally for father. Quick review. How do you draw the Beth? You start here, you move left, you curve down, make sure you put a boot on it, come straight back over, and you've completed the Beth. If you put a dot inside of it, it's pronounced as a B. If you leave the dot out, then it softens to the letter V. Aleph, first letter, Beth, second letter. Put the two together, Aleph, Bet, alphabet, or using these two letters in our first word that a child would learn, Abba. Abba. And we are told in Corinthians that we can by the Spirit, and also in the book of Romans chapter 8, we cry out by the Spirit, Abba, which means Father.
The Hebrew letter Gimel.
The third letter of the Hebrew alphabet is found on pages 13 and 14 in your Hebrew workbook. The third letter of the alphabet is the letter Gimel. G-I-M-E-L. Gimel. As a matter of fact, the word Gimel is the word in Arabic for the word camel, and that's exactly what this word Gimel means. Camel. Now, how do you form the Gimel? It is the first of 6 letters in the alphabet that are slightly smaller than the 15 letters that we will learn. The Gimel is just as tall as the other letters, but notice it's only half as wide. You come straight over, straight down, up in the center, and then you come down below the line. Please remember that this part of the letter finishes below your line, Gimel. Now, I point this out to you because when you see typewritten Gimels, you will have to compare them. Here's a handwritten one where it goes below the line, but typewriters sometimes make it look like this. I want you to see the difference because you will be looking at one from a typewriter and drawing the other one. Remember, the Gimel, straight over, straight down, up in the center, and then down below the line. Gimel. Now, the numeric value of this particular letter is the number 3. Each Hebrew letter has a numeric value. The Aleph is 1, the Beth is 2, and the numeric value of the Gimel is 3. Now, biblically speaking, this letter Gimel also has to do with a word that you will find frequently in the Bible. It's the word to be blessed. To bless. So the word Gimel or camel is the word to bless. And I have here for you to see that the camel is directly involved in the word blessing. When you say God bless you to someone, you are conveying the idea found in the letter Gimel. In the Middle East, Arabs wear headgear which they call kafia. This particular one is red, and it represents those who live in the country of Jordan. Each color that you see represents a different nationality group. If it were all white, it would be from Saudi Arabia. If it were black, it would be from Palestine. If it were blue, it would be from Jerusalem, and so on. And particularly, the headgear is placed on a man's head to keep the sun off of his neck and forehead. He puts it on his head, and then he puts this black rope on his head to hold the kafia in place. Now, the reason I put this here is to show you that the camel, the G letter, has to do with this rope. This rope, where does it come from? It comes from the camel. At night, when the camels kneel down, to keep them from wandering around, they place a rope over their big knobby knees. What do they do with the rope in the daytime? They put the rope on their head. This is exactly why Peter says in the epistle of 1 Peter chapter 3, gird up the loins of your mind, that the Word of God should act like this rope and should keep your camel or your mind from wandering.
The Hebrew letter Daleth.
The fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the letter Daleth, and you will find this information on pages 15 and 16 in your Hebrew workbook. The Daleth, spelled D-A-L-E-T-H, Daleth. The meaning of this letter is the word door. It means door. In fact, to this day, when you want someone to shut the door, you say to a man, Sagor had-Daleth, shut the door, Daleth. It's a full-size letter written from left to right. You come straight over, you stop, you come in just a little bit, and then you come straight down. Now, it's very critical that this part of the letter be formed. This tittle sticks out. You go straight over, back in just a little bit, and then straight down. Daleth. The sound that this letter makes is the sound D. D, obviously, as in door. Door, Daleth. The numeric value for this letter is the number 4. Now, how does this look like a door? How does this look like a door? You have to understand that in the Middle East they build their houses out of block. Then they come to a door and they leave an opening and continue their blocks. And then they bring the next course of block like this and so on. So the door would then have a board laid across the top so that they can continue putting the block and the right doorpost. So the Daleth is the door top and the right doorpost. So here's the top and here's the right doorpost. Daleth. Sound is D. Now, I have here a box. This one happens to be made out of brass. And the word for box is the word mezuzah. And inside this box, you will find scriptures, Deuteronomy 6, Deuteronomy 11, Exodus chapter 13, written in Hebrew, placed inside this box, sealed up, and then the Jewish family would then take the mezuzah and put it on the right doorpost of their door as they are exiting their house. And the point would be that the mezuzah goes on the doorpost because Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 9 says to bind them on our hands, to bind them on our foreheads as frontlets, and to put the scriptures on our doorposts. So when the Jewish family is leaving their home, they would kiss their fingertips, touch the mezuzah on their doorpath on the way out, and then touch each of their eyes, because I love the Word. In this box is the Word, and it, the Word, is a lamp unto my path. It goes on the right doorpost. And on the mezuzah you will find written the name Shaddai, for